Some moments don't make the headlines. Some snapshots don't land the front page. Some stories don't ever go viral. Some messages never get heard. But in spite of the sensational and unbelievable and unprecedented that crowd out the everyday, there are some things that are just story-worthy.
For me, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I get to do is open my window and look at my garden. And the first thing we do after having our coffee or tea in the morning is to go wander through our garden and look at what's changed. We get to literally watch things grow from seed. And that to me is the most perfect representation of the Lord's goodness and like everything that He has created this world to be, and that grounds me to Him every single morning.
The easiest, most direct, gospel-oriented story of the Bible is that a seed falls into the ground and dies and comes back to life. And that just leads straight to the gospel of being born again.
I want all of the kids in this congregation and their parents to experience that.
One of the challenges of living life as the church is knowing how to make the best use of the resources and opportunities that God has given us to impact the community in which we are situated with the gospel. How do we best cultivate the kingdom goodness of God in the world around us with the talents, interests, tools, and experience that make us a unique tile in the mosaic of the capital C church? Theoretically, this is an easy get. The makeup of no church is exactly like any other, and so it would seem simple enough to ask, what can we uniquely contribute to this community at this time and in this place? But often the same simple steps are rinsed and repeated. Have small groups, offer Bible studies, promote special services, partner with a nonprofit in the area, go on a short-term mission trip building a facility in a needy area. And please don't get me wrong, none of those things are bad. In fact, it's probably good that churches have a set of tried and true constructs to base their ministry in their community. But in my experience, that regularity, maybe even predictability, can start to feel rote, and the ministry of different local churches can feel interchangeable. Enter Mark and Debbie McLaughlin and Peyton Kitchens. These longtime members of the Grace community are keenly sensitive to the felt needs of our community and communities around the globe in the area of nourishment and food. And their unique way of meeting those needs? Gardening.
Genesis, it starts in a garden, and God is the first gardener.
When I started a garden in my backyard, I had no idea what I was doing. I killed a lot of plants. There's no such thing as a green thumb. You just learn from doing. And I started to realize that if I was this passionate about this for my family and making sure that my little one was going to be having nutrient-dense food to fuel his body so that he was getting big and strong, other moms would want the same thing.
I mean, God created the garden and He asked Adam to take care of it. And I honestly feel like there's this feeling in me when I'm gardening that I'm doing what God did, what God told Adam to do.
And bringing forth life.
Yeah. And so there's just a sense of, in the physical doing of, I'm cooperating with God.
And so I started thinking, what about all that land behind Grace? Nobody's using it for anything. How can we take that and turn it into something that's going to have a positive impact on our community? How could I go about teaching other people how to grow a garden and get excited about the food that they're consuming?
And I often wonder, since there's so much language about unity amidst diversity in the Bible, is that standard list of ministry efforts the only thing available to us, or even the best way to reach a community? If the only entry point to engaging with the gospel is that you already recognize your need for the gospel, or a Bible study, or a small group, etc., it seems like we might be forgetting the power of connecting on the basis of the actual felt needs of the community.
Grace, ever since we started coming here, has always had its fingers in our community. One of the things that drew Ryan and I to this church not only was the global missions, but the local missions. And what does it look like to serve the person who lives right across the street? Our goal here is to bring people in and teach them a methodology that they can become comfortable with, practice here on our land, and once they come away from that with the knowledge and the confidence to do it themselves, to take it and practice it in their own yard and feed themselves.
The knee-jerk reaction often of Americans is, well, let me give them money, let me give them food. The thing that we've always wanted to do is let me help them to learn how to grow food. And in our
And
case,
use what's in their own hand
Yeah.
already, not needing inputs that are expensive like fertilizer or tractors, but what can we help them to do with what they already have available that they can take ownership of themselves?
We would love to bring those people who don't have food security, whether it's nutrient dense or not, and teach them how to grow a garden.
there is a place for aid, there is a place to giving directly. And in our garden, we are going to, with what we grow, we're going to give it away. But we'd much rather people come and learn how to do it for themselves.
And learn how easy it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like the Lord has given us this methodology and this simple, low-cost way of gardening to kind of fix that problem from the ground up. Instead of always pouring effort into, we want these people to feel empowered to take responsibility for their own food so they can be self-sufficient.
For Mark and Debbie, this garden project represents a perfect opportunity to reach out, to draw people in, and to connect on a personal level in the middle of productive, life-giving work. Having spent most of their 30-odd years in Ethiopia as missionaries doing this very same kind of ministry, the parallels and the connections to ministry here are natural and plentiful.
We're not good at knowing how to to talk to our neighbors. And a garden is an opportunity to talk to your neighbor.
People show up with things to share with each other. Produce to share, canned goods to share, seedlings to share, ideas to share.
Stories to share. I mean, the things that we tell each other while we're hoeing in the garden. Sometimes we're sharing with each other sensitive things.
Right.
Sometimes we're just happy, giddy, but
And
it's always fun.
we pray for each other's needs together, but
Yeah.
we're actually doing life together, and I think our Western churches don't give us a lot of room to do actual life together.
There's natural touch points for relationship, and relationship is the vehicle by which the gospel travels.
You don't just grow your garden for yourself, you grow it with your neighbor in mind.
Right, so that's it.
For Peyton, the motivation was much more personal. Her son Finn, who was an adorable distraction as I collected footage for this project, toddling around in his overalls, kerchief, and mud boots, helping to move rocks from the garden bed, was a primary push towards taking up gardening.
For me, physical nourishment was the thing that first got me into gardening. It was the thing that kind of drew me to the idea, this thing that I didn't know anything about. Nourishing my body and my family's body, that was what was interesting to me. I want to make sure that we are physically nourished so that we can go out into the rest of our lives, as a family at least, and do well at the things God has tasked us with. All of that led to learning about regenerative agriculture, and I just instantly felt the Lord tugging my heart to steward our land well. I didn't know what that meant yet. I'd never had a garden growing up. But as soon as we moved into our house here and I had a tiny backyard to take advantage of, it all turned into a garden.
As our interview went on and the questions became more personal, Peyton began to display a deep level of passion for this idea of stewarding our land and our bodies well. The thought was clearly emotionally stirring, and as she cited studies and declining trends in the nutritional values of the food that we all consume, much more for people in areas where nutrient-dense foods are scarce, I found myself challenged to think more profoundly about ways of living and being in the world that for most of us are just a matter of course. Regardless of where you sit on the spectrum of politics, influence, or socioeconomic status, the thought that our physical well-being is deeply tied to our spiritual walk should give us pause. Living in the world but not of it began to take on a broader meaning than the rigidity and isolationism that was often implied while I was growing up.
I just feel like our whole society has gotten so far removed from where their food comes from, and it's all about consumption and making it easy. And I get that everybody's busy, but like the Lord gave us gardens to tend to, and I just feel like we all just need to like get back to the roots of what that looks like and get in touch with everything He's given us, and stopping long enough to pay attention to that is so important and so special. And that's what I want to get everybody excited about.
And while we might quibble over the exact tone of our varying perspectives of mass-produced food, agricultural practices, and other environmental causes, it struck me that holding the space for those varying perspectives and honestly considering how another person's viewpoint might affect my life in God is the express strength of our unity in Christ. Our image-bearing nature is to be a piece of the mosaic, and through all of our individual personalities, interests, and concerns, a holistic picture of the goodness of God can be more beautifully envisioned.
From a spiritual perspective, we want to tie our mission for the Grace Garden Project into Grace's mission statement, which is following Jesus compels us to extend grace to others so that Christ's kingdom may flourish. Our goal as the Grace Garden Project is to grow food, grow people, and grow the kingdom. We feel that being in touch with God's creation is a spiritual practice that allows us to reflect on everything that God has given us, and we want to pass that on to other people. I want them to experience what we experience in, there's so much that you can't say with words about what it feels like to steward a garden and to take care of it and to have something that you're always going out and checking on. Like the day-to-day taking care of it, there's just something that connects you with creation that's, I don't know how to put words to that.
But maybe not being able to put words to it is the point. Maybe there's something beyond the intellectual, the academic, and the didactic that many of our typical ministry opportunities miss. Maybe there's something to putting on your ratty jeans, slathering on some sunscreen, and literally getting your hands dirty with another person who may need to till some soil or pull some weeds in their own hearts that can have a lasting impact in our homes and communities. Maybe pulling that tomato from the ground, taking it immediately to the kitchen counter and slicing it up to be proffered on a sandwich adds something to our hospitality and care of ourselves and those around us. So, Grace Church has a garden, and we hope that it will remain well watered for a long time to come.